All right, guys. So we finished up with some of these famous explorers here, and I know we didn't get through that whole list that I had for your assignment, but in any case, I should have a little bit of insight about this age of exploration. And like I mentioned, this is coming right around the same time the Renaissance, the Reformation. So a lot of this movement, this exploration, this motivation to expand is based off of these new innovations from the Renaissance. And also because of spreading, like I said, Catholicism, Christianity, and how these new perspectives of religion are forming. Okay. And the goal is to try to convert as many people as possible. So as you see here with these European countries, they're establishing a lot of colonies eventually, and acquiring a lot of land in the New World. As I mentioned before, with France, they're focused mostly here in the Midwest United States, focused along the Mississippi River, the Great Lakes region, up into parts of Canada. Right, Great Britain, England, right, as you can see here in red, okay, they're going to advance even more during this time as they win a war against Spain to really solidify their actions and colonies in the New World, right? And also, like I mentioned, Spain, Portugal, they also have possessions here within the New World, South America, Central America, and even moving up into North America. So again, when you're talking about Central America, the Caribbean islands, South America, okay, obviously the language most spoken is Spanish because of this age of exploration. All right, like I mentioned too with Canada, there are some parts within Canada that are still French speaking. And again, that dates back to this age of exploration. All right, so the Spanish Armada. So in 1588, Spain, as they're conquering a lot of these lands here in the New World, right, and this is prompting many of these other countries like England to do the exact same, right? This is going to only lead to warfare. Sooner or later, these European countries, as they're expanding, as they're conquering new lands, they're going to butt up against one another. The world's only so big, right? And even with this new land, eventually they're going to run into one another. And Spain, in this case, with Prince Philip II, he was considered the most powerful man in the world. And the reason for it is because all the riches the New World provided for Spain, that was able and capable from these conquistadors, extracting resources and bringing the wealth back home. All right, so for the King of Spain, his goal is to try to eliminate the competition. And what better way to do that than through warfare? So he knew the only way he can defeat England is by conquering the seas. So he builds a fleet of ships, they call it the Spanish Armada, to try to conquer and take over England. And the goal is, if they can defeat England, that will eliminate another competitor, the strongest competitor at that time, from these New World possessions, these possessions over in the Western Hemisphere, what we know as Central, South, and North America. So he sends a fleet of ships up to England to try to conquer. And he actually surrounded England to try to prevent any resources coming in and out. Like we know with England, it's what? What is it? Paul. Oh, go ahead, Paul. Whatever. Yeah, just because you want to yell it out. Yeah, it's an island, right? So they're, again, limited to the resources they have, especially being focused so far north. Okay, they need these overseas possessions to fuel their market, fuel their economy. Spain sends these huge ships, these massive ships up to England to try to conquer it, to take it over. But with England, their, I guess you say their strength was that they had these smaller, a little bit more mobile ships. And when it came to battle out in the open water, England dominated the seas. Okay, and the Spanish Armada was defeated. And England actually came up with a lot of methods that was unique for the time to defeat the Spanish Armada. These massive ships, these massive caravels and warships of the time. They actually set many of their ships on fire and threw them, literally, sailed them right into some of these Spanish ships that were docked along the coast of northern France. So they came up with new methods of means of attacks and trying to conquer and take out these ships, these caravels of the Spanish Armada, even before they get out into the English Channel. So there's a lot of reports that the English actually used kind of almost their ships as suicide bombers to target these Spanish Armada, these larger ships, and just focus them, catch them on fire, and direct them right into these larger ships, destroying them. And it was a unique type of battle, right? And out in the open waters, again, with England having smaller ships, being a little bit more mobile, they could take out these larger ships even before they could get going and even start sailing. So England wins, okay? And for England, This is going to set the stage for even more of their expansion in the New World and to dominate the New World and establish these colonies that we know today. If you think about it, if it wasn't for this war between Spain and England, and with England coming out on top, you think we'd have the United States? Probably not, right? If anything, we'd probably be speaking Spanish. Imagine that, Carolyn?
Did they also use Greek fire in this war?
Yes, yes, they did. Yeah, so means of weaponry that kind of is unique and kind of strange for the battlefield at the time, especially out in the water. And this war was definitely unique, definitely different. But anyway, here's a picture I found, which I thought was interesting, of the battle out in the English Channel, all around England, and the battle around what we know as Northern Atlantic. So again, with England, they come out on top, they win. And with that, that's going to expand their wealth, their possessions of the New World, establishing the 13 colonies, and eventually we know as the United States of America. Without it, again, who knows what would happen. Here's a better look at this war. Spain is sending a lot of ships up here, again, trying to focus and surround the island of England, preventing any resources and materials coming in. The best way to defeat an enemy is cut off their supplies, cut off the resources. And for Spain, that was the goal. And they did so by, again, creating a huge fleet of ships, massive fleet of ships. But with England, their ships were just a little bit more mobile. They might have been smaller, but in any case, they could target these ships a little bit easier and move and evade and take out pretty easy. Like I mentioned, with some of these kamikaze ships that the English would send out, a lot of the Spanish Armada was focused here in northern France. Okay, they were docked up along the side here, close to Normandy actually. And they were about to sail out to England, try to continue to choke off the resources coming in. And this is where England sent a lot of these ships on fire into the Spanish Armada, taking them out even before they could get out in the English Channel. So again, some new unique forms of battle. What's up, Wyatt?
This is accurate. You can see how the water level changed England because that's not what it's in.
Yeah. Yeah, good. Global warming, is that what you're saying? All right, anyway, so like I mentioned, with these colonies being established, okay, when it comes to the crown, they only could really help support so much voyages, so much expedition, and establishing colonies. It's really expensive to do so. So this is amping up a lot of these private investors to set up these voyages and these colonies in the New World. So this is creating chartered companies. Okay, another term for it, another word for it is joint stock companies. Okay, the Netherlands and Dutch have done this really from the beginning. Okay, and they're establishing trade and setting up a form of marketplace in Asia by these private investors rather than the crown funding the whole ship and funding the whole colonies and voyages. So that's one thing that I like you guys to remember, especially the colonies in England, well, from England over to the United States, what we know is Virginia Stock Company, establishing these colonies like Jamestown. Okay, someone talked a little bit about Sir Walter Raleigh, and what we know is the Roanoke Island. Even though it was a failure, this was still funded by a lot of these private investors. Okay, so in any case, these large corporations, these business, these wealthy individuals would fund these voyages in these colonies to be established. It wasn't all just strictly by the crown. So again, this is establishing a sense of capitalism to emerge during this time, where the private sector would take over. And it's just not controlled by the government by sole means. It has to be approved by the government, has to be approved by, let's say, the monarch. But for the most part, this is a lot of these voyages, a lot of these colonies are being set forth by these chartered companies, these private companies, separate from the crown. All right, so with mercantilism, this is a nation's power dependent on its wealth from controlled trading colonies. So England especially, we know it's a small island, right? They're limited to the amount of resources and materials they have. They're dependent on these overseas colonies to supply them with resources and materials from other lands. Without it, again, England wouldn't be so much, right? And eventually, England's going to dominate the world, really, 70% of the world's land mass by around the mid-1800s. It just goes to show with a strong navy comes power, comes wealth, and a lot of overseas possessions. Again, it's not funded totally by the crown, but with these private investments. All right, is there any questions? I know I kind of went through that pretty quick, But with the Spanish Armada being defeated by England, this is setting the stage for England to really control a lot of the trade and the seas from here on out. And they'll have that control all the way up until World War II. And yeah, you can argue with World War I with the German U-boats challenging the English out in the open seas, but for the most part, they still control the seas all the way up into World War II. And that was transition for the United States, obviously, being that dominant naval power. All right, is there any questions? Okay, and that's it. Like I said, tomorrow we'll have the review, right? And then Thursday we'll have the exam. Good job on those presentations. I was really pleased with this class and their presentations. Can't say that for the rest, but anyway, good job. Good job.
Well,
It's lighter.